Okay, Facebook goes first. I think the other two will follow. So hello again. Another week, another devlog. I think we're at number 7. Considering that we started with number 0, this is actually our 8th. But in terms of number, it's the number 7 real devlog. So let's see what we have done since last Thursday, because I'm trying to put the schedule back to Wednesdays. So we have done some code work that is not that doesn't yield that much visual stuff, but we have a few things we can show that make sense visually. Let's see. We were talking about adding soil to units that could actually receive soil, so that there is the container unit. And let's try to plant tomato. If you click in an empty container, silly me, you're going to get a warning that will say, well, you need to put soil in this. First, the screen will look prettier. Later, let's pick the right type of soil for the plant that we want to, put in this area. So I talked in previous devlogs that we are working out basic localization topics. So this one doesn't actually have a description yet. This you see the keyword for it, kind of awkward. Let's add some soil, maybe 30 liters or something. Maybe we'll actually move this automatically to a minimum accepted amount of soil so that it doesn't turn into a guess game. Because if you put too little, then the level won't be enough to sustain the plant. So either way, we now have enough soil. So because we had the tomatoes selected, I believe last time, we still hold it in buffer. And here we go, that the tomato is now planted. Let's do another one. It's here. In future versions, we will most likely not let the player plant tall plants. Well, tall plants that also go wide in a back area like this, because then the leaves won't have enough room to grow healthily. So this area will be reserved for things that go high and like to climb, like beans, peas, that sort of stuff. Cucumbers might work, but anything bushier has to be done in. So let's skip part. So we now have 2 mountain merit tomato plants. Let's fast forward the time. I believe we disabled the conditions where we check whether there's enough nutrition or water. We just assume everything is fine right now for this demonstration. That both plants are now harvestable. So again, in the future, we'll make sure that whichever one you select here will be highlighting the right one. Right now, we see the same plant and the same name repeated here, but you kind of which one. Maybe it'll make some sense why you want to do some operation in this plant, because maybe the shadow, or it's so tall that the shadow is basically covering here, right here, that you're not happy. So you'd rather maybe cut this down in half, not touch this one. So you kind of maybe need to know which one you are actually. But let's move on to the harvest mechanics. Now, we are going to create a bit of randomization about this, but right now I believe this plant has 10 harvestable tomato fruits. So the maximum amount is 10. So let's collect 5. So this is the conversation we had this morning, that should we visually represent harvestable fruits accurately. Might be too much work because you customize the model as you go, and in one season you could have tomatoes that give you 10 flowers, and in a bad season maybe you'll have 8. Now, do you really have to reflect the same number visually in the scene? So we kind of wanted to go with an extrapolated model, which is we have 16 or 17 fruits right now, harvestable parts on the plant. And this is basically going to be mapped to the, the visual amounts that you see. So like 5 out of 10 will basically take half of the visual. So when we collect it, as you can see, let me rotate the camera. This one. So you can get a bit more detail, and half the pickable items here are gone. The other one has not been touched. So let's collect another 5. I believe if I do 2, because we have now 2 out of 5, I'm going to see half of this gone too. Yeah, so there's a bit of mapping going on. Maybe we'll change that model. Maybe we'll stick with this. That has to be decided. And I believe because there's some randomization, not you could actually have some of the fruits still left up, or like above the middle part here, so it's kind of randomly picked out. What else? So let's collect everything, and because of that mapping, sometimes it could be one-off. I believe there is nothing to harvest here. We cannot increase this number, so this is a bug that we are working out. Usually it says if there is still one tomato left, but at some point when you are done with this, you will want to add it to compost unit. Compost unit will happily receive it, and because it received only green material, so we talked about this in earlier devlogs. So now we have visual harvest feedback, that it isn't just some moving around. And you'll also, if you look in inventory, you could see that we have 10 harvested, 10 stackable items of mountain merit. The other mountain merit is representing the seeds. So we used some seeds to plant, and we collected 10 fruit, 10 edible tomatoes. So this area will be worked out so that it makes a bit more sense visually, because in the future when we have the same name, mountain merit, describing 3 different entities, one for seed, one for seedling, the last one for the edible items, there are going to be too many mountain merit needed, and icons for that plant will be more or less the same. So we need a bit of different structure here so that things are organized in a way that actually is crystal clear, that there is no confusion. Let's look at our up commits. Because I think there's something that I may just talk about. I'm 100% sure there is no visual feedback for it yet. I will just read about it here. So we also have worked out soil properties, meaning the soil will have nutrition values, oxygen, carbon, nitrogen, that sort of stuff. So depending on how wet the soil is, how much water there is, the plant is either absorbing it or not absorbing it. There's some kind of like oxygen blocking happening if the soil is too wet. So we are working out those things in the code. This doesn't really have anything yet. And especially right now, since we made everything infinitely healthy, let's say, nothing could die. Everything is just in perfect condition. So so to test this, basically, we had to turn off the soil conditions contribution to the health of this plant. So besides these Godot improvements, or the improvements that we can actually show in Godot, there is still some stuff that we haven't implemented, but it is moving separately in our Figma design files. If you followed the streams in the last few days, you may have noticed that we are separating our original design file. We essentially want to create two separate files. So one is going to be specifically tutorial screens. The other one will be the UI screens that we have been working on so far. And we have the basic tutorial logic or the flow. So we have this imaginary Dave character who is giving you instructions, and you are staying in his house for the summer. So he's basically instructing you with the uh, gameplay elements, moving the camera, all that stuff. And he's introducing you to some of these options. And essentially, Dave tells you that, let's see, uh, while you are staying in his house, he tells you that his visit, wherever he's at, he's going to stay for a long time. So you kind of, fancy growing tomatoes in his garden, and he's going to give you further instructions how to do that. So basically, this is the first scenario. You have a time limitation. It's during the summer, and the win condition is that you need to grow 50 kilos of tomatoes. Of course, that's a bit arbitrary number. As developers, as we play the game, we will see how difficult it is to grow 50 kilos of tomatoes, and we'll adjust everything accordingly. But for the time being, he's holding your hands to utilize the interface so that you could go to the market, find the right kind of seed, pick the best supplier, and order it. The order arrives at your place. Um, since this is a devlog, I'm talking about the summary of what we have done. I will most likely stream this afternoon, and I will be continuing the work after the orders. So which will actually be the inventory logic and planting, and we'll move on to the gardening operation. That will be the rest of tutorial, which will most likely be the summary, like the main topic of next week's devlog. But sometimes we change our priorities. But this is what we were able get done since last Thursday. And as usual, if you have feedback, it's always welcome. That's it for this week. So see you on the next one.